Hey, good morning, it's Austin Harman Mixes here. Today I'm going to walk you through how to put a gate on a live microphone. What is a gate? A gate is a very useful tool for live mixing that allows you to automatically turn on and turn off a microphone based on how loud the input signal is. So let's do a deep dive on what a gate is. So let's take a look at the drum set section on this D-Live here. This is typically a situation where you're going to find gates to be most useful. In the middle section next to the trim knob, you can see all of the gates that are enabled currently on the microphones. The red bar that is on the left-hand side of those boxes shows that the gate is enabled. Now, if we dive into a specific one, let's take the gate on the kick in, for example. This is the screen for the gate. You have the attack, the hold, the release, the threshold, and the depth. Now, on the D-Live, we also have a sidechain source, but ignore that for now. That's a specialty to the D-Live, and it's not generally found in most desks. Now, focusing on the attack, this, like the compressor, defines how long or how quickly the gate opens. So if you think about a drum set, whenever you strike a drum, you want that microphone to open as soon as the drum is hit. And you can actually change the dynamics or how the microphone sounds based upon how quick that attack opens. So for example, if you want the sound to be very sticky, you can have a very fast attack. But if you want the sound to be more rounded, you can actually use the gate to help shape that sound without doing any EQ by turning that attack up. The attack can also be useful if your gate is doing what I call fluttering, where the gate is kind of opening, closing like this on a vocal mic or on a drum mic. You can change that attack to be a little bit higher, and it's going to keep the gate from opening as fast. Next is the hold and the release. These two things are interconnected on the drum set, and on the gate, and they're particularly useful on drums. So the hold defines how long the gate is going to be open, so how long you're actually going to hear the mic. And the release defines how quickly or slowly the gate will turn back down. Now these are very important because whenever you have, let's take a floor tom for example, if you have a hold of around, let's say 50 milliseconds, what's going to happen is the microphone is going to open and close really quick like this. Now, when that happens, the drum is not going to sound very musical. It's just going to be like boom, 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 rather than a tom. So take that hold, start out low, and turn it up until it actually sounds like a drum. Now, what do you have to keep in mind with the hold? If the hold is open too long, you'll get cymbal bleed in your microphones. So you have to kind of balance that hold with musicality versus keeping the noise out of the mic. Then the release determines how long that microphone is going to be open. If you find that you can't seem to get the hold set without introducing cymbal bleed, try adjusting the release to be faster. However, this comes at the cost of returning to a situation where you may have flutter. If you have a really fast release, the gate may go like this. Again, that's not ideal. You'll hear that in the PA. Now, what I would recommend for drums is a hold generally around 100 to 120 milliseconds, unless you're getting feedback. And then a release will be dependent upon what kind of drum it is. And this also would apply for really any instrument set that you're using. So if you have a really fast release, that's going to be useful for a kick because kicks are generally muddy. Whereas if you have a slower release, that's more useful for things like toms and snares. Last thing we want to focus on is the threshold. Now the threshold is rather important because basically what this is going to define is how loud the source has to be in order for the microphone to open. So if you think about a kick drum, if a kick input is rising to about -20, Every time it gets to minus 20, it's going to open because the threshold is set around minus 27. Okay? Now, what you want to do is you want to set your threshold just high enough where the gate is closed if things like cymbals or other drums hit, but just low enough that the gate still opens every time that drum is hit. Now, if you have a really inconsistent player, this can be challenging to dial in. Now, this is where the depth comes in, especially on a tom. You don't want to miss the ghost notes or the little kind of rolls that happen on a tom. So what you can do is actually roll this depth up. You can see this red line at the bottom rising as I turn this depth down. What this is going to allow is a certain amount of noise to constantly come through the microphone while still blocking most of it. It's more like a soft gate. And you can see how, as I roll this depth back, the actual reduction isn't that much. So you have a lot of control over how much reduction actually happens when the gate opens and closes. This can be incredibly useful on toms, especially, and even the snare drum if you want to put a gate on the snare and still get some of the rolls and some of the ghost notes going on in the snare.